be pressured into launching this attack. And this will go down in history as one of the most foolish, reckless steps in world history, because I think it's going to end up doing significant damage, not just physical damage to the U.S. military capabilities in the region, but damage to the U.S. reputation. It's like, you have Muhammad Ali as this great fighter, and then once Muhammad Ali steps into a ring against somebody that he's expected to beat, and that fighter beats him, all of a sudden the reputation goes away, and that's what's facing the United States, because Russia and China have really made a point of joining forces in the wake of that failed color revolution that was launched on December 28th, with the United States taking the lead in an economic attack, an act of war on Iran. On June 29th, Russia, China, and Iran signed a trilateral security agreement. And that wasn't just for show. That is an agreement with real teeth, and the Russians and Chinese have been acting on that agreement since the signing that took place late last month.
Trump's more primo carnera than Muhammad Ali, and only people of your age and mine will know that allusion. But you remember the film about primo carnera. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And if the United States, you see, Iran doesn't have to win the war. It just has to survive the war and inflict serious material damage on the Trump presidency. And if I were a betting man, I'd put money on their ability to do that, Larry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Look, there is a deal. If Trump was actually acting on his own, in possession of his faculties and pursuing his own agenda, I actually think he'd make the deal with Iran that's on the table. Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. They don't, at least under the Ayatollah, they don't want to build it. They see that as an act against God, that it is a sin to do so. So they're willing to allow guarantees to be put in place that would ensure that they're not building a nuke, and to allow permanent on-site inspection of the enrichment facilities. So if the goal was just to, if they were serious about, we don't want Iran to get a nuke, then that deal's there to be available. But that's not what it's about. The United States persists in telling the big lie, a number of big lies. Number one, that Iran is the number one sponsor of terrorism in the world. It is absolutely, factually not true. I can prove it both through the publications from my old office at State, the patterns they put out, the patterns of global terrorism. That started in 1990, which reported on what had happened in 89. It had continued through 2003. Then they began calling it country reports on terrorism. The last one was issued last April in 2025 for the preceding year, 2024. And then there's a French think tank called Fondalab. And Fondalab also has done a study. And what does that study reveal? Since 1979, and let's put it 1980, is 46 years, the number one groups responsible for 80+% of the terrorist attacks are the Sunnis that are sponsored by individuals and governments in the Gulf, the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis. Not a single group in the top groups that have killed literally hundreds of thousands of people over the last 46 years, not a single one of them is connected to or funded by Iran. Not one. And yet they go with this lie that Iran's the number one sponsor of terrorism. It is a flagrant lie.
Well, I mean, they even say Cuba is a sponsor of terrorism, when Cuba, of course, is completely antithetical to terrorism. It's completely alien to their political ideology, but that's another matter. You seem to think that Trump, left to his own devices, might be favorable to a deal rather than what will turn out, I agree with you, to be one hell of a war, Larry. This is not Venezuela.
Yes.
This is not even Iraq 2003. This is the mother of all wars we're talking about. and fraught with terrifying dangers to all kinds of people, many of them close friends of the Trump family. But Trita Parsi, my earlier guest, he felt that Trump had taken charge of this file, that Trump was the one doing the charging towards war. And while he acknowledged that there were divisions in the administration, this time at least, Trump was up for the mother of all wars.
Yeah, well, yeah, he is up for it. Yeah, absolutely. You remember what happened when Israel launched its surprise attack on June 13th? Initially, Trump's attitude was, "Hi," he was Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. "I know nothing. I see nothing. I hear I didn't know anything about this." And then 2 days later, he goes, "Oh, I knew about it all along. I was fully on top of it." He's going to say whatever needs to be said. The military momentum in this is more of the deep state, and I continue to insist that the deep state is driving a lot of this train, not Trump. And I use the example of when he hosted the quote peace talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan last summer in D.C. Because when I saw that, I was like, where did that come from? Because I guarantee you, if you would have told Trump to find Armenia and Azerbaijan on a map, he wouldn't have known which continent to look on. In fact, he still keeps calling it, he settled the war between Azerbaijan and Albania. And you're going, yeah, he's really on top of his geography game here. No, that was a CIA operation. And note that the CIA has an enormous presence in Armenia, a significant presence. So this is this goes into this broader plan to take out the Iranian Islamic Republic, not because it's the main source of terrorism. In fact, the real irony here is the Iranians with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, they were in the forefront of fighting those radical Sunni Islamist groups, the ISIS in particular, Al Qaeda, Tahrir al-Sham, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, whose former leader is now president of Syria. Iran was fighting these Islamic groups who, on paper, were the ones responsible for killing Americans. And yet, what's America doing? We're funding the very ones we claim that they're killing us. And we're attacking the guys who were trying to fight them. We are in, George, my friend, we're in a crazy world.
Yeah, we are. We've never had a crazier one, and you and I have lived through a lot of crazy people running things in the world. God knows if we'll survive it, Larry. But going back to the kinetics, if you like, you make the point that the latest aircraft carrier to join the group is about 3 days off the coast of Israel. It can either then park itself there and try to help the anti-missile operation, or it could sail further into the Gulf, which would knock D-Day forward a few days into the following week. But it will be by the weekend in the Mediterranean, and it will be off the coast of Israel. Is Israel ready to face the inevitable consequences of this?
No, they're not. And if one of the other false narratives that has been pushed by both Washington and Israel is that Iran barely laid a glove on them during the 12-day war. But, the actual evidence showed that there was substantial and significant damage. And the Iranians basically pulled their punches even then. But now they've recognized that they are in an existential fight for survival. And they are approaching it that way. That's why they swallowed their pride and sought direct assistance from both Russia and China, which both are happy to provide. Right now, Russia, China, and Iran, along with India, are conducting joint naval exercises. Now, this has been an annual event, so this exercise is nothing that's just been ginned up in the last 2 weeks because of the rising tensions. It's been on the board, but it is being invested now by Russia and China with some additional participation sending a message to the United States that Iran's not going to be in this alone. And then when you look at the array of firepower, what the United States can actually do, right now it's keeping its aircraft carrier that's in the Arabian Sea about 1,000 miles off the coast of Iran. Well, why is that relevant? Because the destroyers that are accompanying that aircraft carrier that are to provide the air defense screen, they also carry on board, there are three destroyers. Each one is carrying a load of about 56 Tomahawk cruise missiles. The only problem is the Tomahawk cruise missile can only fly 1,000 miles. So if you're 1,000 miles offshore and then you're firing a missile that can only go 1,000 miles, that means you're going to be blowing up a bunch of beachfront property, but not much else. So, and then it requires the U.S. to deliver missiles that are launched from aircraft. Well, the Chinese have now provided Iran with a three-dimensional radar system that has been fully integrated with Russia's air defense systems, S-300, S-400. And that radar system looks out about 300 miles from the border of Iran. So any stealth aircraft, these are specifically designed to detect stealth aircraft. Any stealth aircraft, once they enter in that, is going to be detected and raises a significant odds that it'll be shot down. So the United States could be experiencing air losses like it has. The last time it experienced any significant air loss was in the campaign in Serbia, Yugoslavia, back in 1999.
Now, you know Russia very well, and so let me segue to that, Larry, because I'm keen to get your expert take on what might be good news. The talks in Geneva between Russia, the United States, and Ukraine, they didn't collapse. Nobody's trousers fell down. They appeared to be difficult, but professional. And one got the impression, even from initial reports, that some progress had been made. And then we learned today something which could be more significant, that just as he was leaving for the airport, the chief Russian negotiator was asked to come back and hold a 2-hour bilateral meeting, just the Russians and the Ukrainians. Whether the US gave permission for that, who knows? But a 2-hour meeting just between the two of them, that sounds like progress to me. What about you?
I'm not as confident. It depends on, was this Budanov or Umarov? Because Budanov has got his ties with the CIA. Umarov has got his ties with British MI6. And there's actually, I call it a sort of a proxy civil war underway right now between the Americans and the Brits, because they're looking at the Ukraine conflict in two very diverse ways. The Russian position is not going to change. It is set in stone, which is the territories of Crimea, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk. Those are part now permanently of the Russian Federal Republic. They're not going to be returned to Ukraine in any form whatsoever. There's not going to be any concessions on that on those issues. The only thing on the table right now is whether Russia will continue to take territory, to take particularly Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv as part of Novorossiya. Both Lavrov and Putin have spoken in recent months about Novorossiya as being, this is part of Russia. So they're looking to negotiate basically a surrender of Ukraine. Zelensky is refusing to surrender, but Zelensky may not be in the same powerful position that he thinks he is. You've got Zaluzhny, who's been in the UK as Ukraine's ambassador to Her Majesty's Court, or His Majesty's Court now. So I view him as a tool of MI6. You got Budanov, who's sitting now as advisor to the president, former head of the intelligence outfit. He's been very close with the CIA. So really, the UK and the United States are going to ultimately decide how this gets settled. And I don't think really the Ukrainians are going to have much of a say in it.
Well, the other Europeans are definitely not, which makes it all the more surprising their reaction to Rubio's speech by telecast at the Munich conference the other day. I got the feeling I had been, as George Bush would put it, misunderestimating Rubio. I think he's emerged as a powerful theoretician of empire, and he has a mission. And I would have thought Vance might be a bit nervous about that mission. And his mission is to relaunch the Western colonial empires, to halt the reversals of what he called communist-inspired colonial uprising. By definition, though he didn't name them, roll back the BRICS, roll back the SCO, reconquer, essentially, reconquer all the ground that has been lost since the Second World War. And the Europeans were up clapping it like seals, standing ovation. What was your reaction?
Same as yours. I thought, Yogi Berra, the old catcher of the New York Yankees, used to say, "This is deja vu all over again." I mean, they've learned nothing since the collapse of the Soviet Union. When the West was presented a golden opportunity to really create a new world order, a world order in which the interests of each country were promoted. We tried to build up, not tear down. We tried to collaborate with, not dominate. Instead, the United States chose the opposite. We saw the Russia economy as prostate, as prostrate on the ground, that we could take control of it. We could essentially rape it of its resources, dominate it, split it up. And then that damn Vladimir Putin comes along and disrupts that whole dream. And instead to go back to pitch this conflict where the United States, by being at the time, 2000, 2001, the dominant economic player in the world, instead of using that position, again, to build up others, we used it to bully and to threaten and to coerce. Well, you can only do that so long before you get the pushback, and that's where BRICS got its start in 2015. And then the development of BRICS, it's accelerated as a result of U.S. actions to punish all countries for not just not doing what the United States wants with respect to bilateral relations, but also punishing India for having diplomatic relations with Russia. And so the United States we're a psychopathic country. And that's why I suggest to my Russian friends, you don't negotiate with a serial killer. You put the serial killer down or in jail. And that's essentially what the United States is, in my view now. We've become the equivalent of a serial killer. We got 700 plus military bases, and we're getting ready to launch a military attack on the country of Iran, who has not attacked us by any stretch. They've not threatened us out of context. And instead, we are going to create a pretext that's going to send bombers in that's going to kill men, women, and children. And we don't give a damn, because they're not real people as far as we're concerned in the United States. They're just the cost of doing business. And that,
well,
I am
Congressman Randy Fine put it, they're less than dogs. Muslims are less than dogs, according to a member of the U.S. Congress, Mr. Randy Fine, just the other day. Now, I'm in Moscow, Larry, and it's full of Americans. They're not going around with Stetsons and cowboy boots, but they're here. And it is reported, I think in The Economist today, but citing Ukrainian intelligence, that Trump has lined up $400 billion worth of business for American companies and American interests here in Moscow. That's, if true, a very powerful reason for the U.S. to finish this thing. But as you put it earlier, Zelensky doesn't want to surrender. So you've got an irresistible force in Donald Trump, and you've got an immovable object in Zelensky. If Trump is really now inked, or at least penciled, a lifting of economic sanctions on Russia, and a huge bonanza of business waiting in the pipe, why doesn't he go all the way and pull the lever that gets rid of Zelensky?
Yeah, well, because Trump's not serious about it. You know, look, let's step back and look objectively at what's happened. And this is per Lavrov as well, Foreign Minister Lavrov. The United States made some firm commitments to Russia at the Anchorage summit last August to Putin. The United States has not fulfilled any of those promises. The United States continues to impose sanctions on Russia and third parties that deal with Russia, number one. Number two, they haven't unfrozen the assets. Number three, they haven't returned the property that was illegally confiscated by Barack Obama in the United States in 2016, December of 2016. They haven't reestablished direct flights between the United States and Russia. You can't point to one single thing where Donald Trump is offered a gesture to say, hey, we're gonna remove these. Remember these people we had sanctions? We're removing those sanctions. They haven't done that. So you can't point to one thing that Donald Trump and his team have done other than continue to escalate. And they're saying, oh, well, we're going to give Zelensky until June. June? Give him till tomorrow at noon. Because the United States can pull the plug that quick. But they don't want to. Because we keep the ultimate goal here is not to have a peaceful relationship with Russia. The ultimate goal here is ultimately to destroy Russia, get control of Russian assets, break Russia up as a it's too damn big. And we want those rare earth minerals. We want the gold, we want the uranium, we want the oil. And the Russians shouldn't have it. That's the Western attitude.
Finally, Larry, if I may, and you've been very generous with your time. Keir Starmer is on the point of falling. He has a by-election coming up at the end of the month. He's virtually certain to lose it ignominiously. Then he's got local elections in May, which are going to be a landslide defeat. And at that point, a leadership challenge against him is virtually a certainty. So if the British are playing this pernicious role, which, I mean, even in Geneva, the British brothel creeper Powell was actually hanging around in the lounge of the hotel where the talks were taking place. He's the national security advisor of Keir Starmer. Who's driving this British determination to play such a dog in the manger role in relation to the Ukraine conflict? Britain's a country on its knees, breaking up, literally breaking up, and its economy going down the drain, unemployment rising. And why are the British so obsessing about keeping this war going?
I would look into the City of London and to the banks, because the hopes and dreams that were inherent in getting control of the resources in Ukraine were always there. Let's not forget, prior to the start of the special military operation, the number one country in the world in terms of natural resources being able to be self-sufficient was Russia. Number 5 was Ukraine. So a country that was that rich in resources was certainly being eyed by the West as a ripe target. Now, the other thing to take into account is, although Ukraine was blessed with this vast abundance of resources, it was the poorest country in Europe. How could that be? Well, the reason for it, and we've seen parallels with what France did to the countries in the Sahel, to Mali, for example, and Niger, that when you've got a colonial interest you are extracting from the country. You're not giving back. You're not doing what the Chinese do with the Belt Road Initiative, where you're building up infrastructure and you're equipping the people with education and trying to raise the standard of living. It's all about taking and absorbing for yourself without any regard for the locals. That's what's happened to Ukraine. Ukraine is just, it's something to be used. And without any regard for its people, without any regard for the welfare of the children. I mean, it's really sick. But the UK is just living out its colonial legacy. I mean, frankly, that's how it's dealt with most of the world for the last 300 years. Become a habit. And unfortunately, the United States has been imitating it. So we're both in the same boat.